Thank you everyone for joining us today for the Zen of remote productivity and collaboration. My name is Matt Caton, and joining me today is my friend and colleague, Jay Ofemi.
Hi guys, how's it going? Great to be a part of the webinar today, and we hope to cover a lot of really interesting stuff.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we realize today's topic is sort of a hot topic in the world today, remote productivity. We've all been, many of us have been working from home, working remotely over the past few weeks or few months. And so today's topic is really on point with the current state of the business environment in the world today. So we're going to be sharing a lot of great examples with you on how to remain productive, remain working with the team, collaborating. So Jay and I will be sharing a brain together today and share with you a few tips and tricks in the brain application at how that can be best accomplished. Now, throughout the demo today, we will have the GoToMeeting question panel open. So if you do have a specific question about a feature you want to see demonstrated, feel free to write it in there. And at the end of the demo, we'll be certain to circle back and answer any additional questions that you may have. So let's go ahead and get started. The first brain that I want to share with you today is a brain that was created for today's specific topic, remote productivity and collaboration. So this particular brain, I'll actually share this with you at the end of the demo today. You'll all receive a thank you email for joining, and you'll have a link to actually download this particular brain if you're interested. And the brain is made up primarily of today's talking points. I used this particular brain to make an outline for the demo that Jay and I are presenting today. And to stay on topic and focus, you can see there are also some links here to common productivity hacks. Just some helpful links that we found online that were interesting and actually changed the storyline of today's webinar. A couple of different articles pointed out some really key ingredients to staying productive, and I gathered from them from The Atlantic or Forbes magazine, a couple of key talking points that I'm mentioning today. So I went ahead and shared those in the brain as well. And of course, there's a whole area under productivity gurus and theories as well. You're probably all familiar with David Allen. He's the author of Getting Things Done, a very helpful book and poignant book on today's topic. We've got so many different types of information coming at us from all different directions, from different people, different organizations and departments. How do you stay focused and stay on top of it? And many of today's key talking points were derived from David Allen's Getting Things Done. So there's a link here to his book and more information about David Allen Getting Things Done. David actually uses the brain technologies, and we actually have a recorded demo of David sharing his brain. I'll be sure to add that. I'm surprised I didn't, but I'll add that into this brain before I share it with everyone on today's call as well. And of course, there's Michael Gelb, if you're familiar with the book Think Like Da Vinci, a book that I liked, very popular, 10 Habits of Highly Effective People by David Covey. And a lesser known book here that I also included just because I like it, it's a book called The Power of Less. And the great thing about this particular book is that it's really focused on minimalizing, reducing and getting rid of all the clutter to stay focused, only what you need, and making that available to you to stay focused. A really, really interesting book and an interesting strategy. So I felt like linking that here as well. Another area of this brain is all about the different types of applications. And this is something that we're going to talk about today in particular. Obviously, today we're going to be focused on using the brain and staying focused and on point and collaborating with the brain technology. But now that so many of us are working from home, working remotely, we're receiving information in different ways that we're not used to. In the old days, I could walk over to Jay's desk and discuss a topic with him, or print out a sheet, or we're both looking at the same screen at the same time. Now we're sending emails, we're receiving information from departments that, again, used to be just right down the hall. Now suddenly we're receiving links to Dropbox or Google Drive or OneNote, or it's in an email or a web page, what have you. So how do we manage and keep track of all these disparate information sources? We're going to be talking about that in the demo brain today as well. And then finally, sort of the overview of today's topic, priming your day. The most important part of a day, potentially, to stay focused and on target is making a brief outline of what's going to be happening today. What's important? What can I push to the back burner? And how do I get started? And so here are a couple of key points down below this particular thought, priming your day, capturing to-dos and notes. Now, Jay is going to focus on this particular area today. And many of the books that I shared with you in the productivity gurus area of this brain, they all talk about bringing your information together in print in a reliable source, so it's staring at you in the face. I need to see a list of tasks that need to get done and weed out, all right, what can get done later in the day, what can get done later in the week, etc. So capturing all that information of tasks that need to be done in notes. Creating urgent and current project sections. So in other words, with all this information, what's the most important? How do we identify that? We'll be taking a look at that in the brain. And action items. Not only how do we know about this information, what are we going to do about it? What's the next step? And some other areas, creating placeholders for innovation and brainstorming. So don't rule out creativity. Yes, there's a lot of things that need to happen today, but I need to have time to just think about that process and maybe go back in and restructure, edit, share that information with my team. And also dividing up what my major goals should be, visualizing those in the brain, along with weeding out distractions. Have a place to put your distractions. A great example of this is, I'm really into bread making right now, but if I spent all day in my recipe brain, I wouldn't be here on today's demo. I'd be looking for the next great sourdough bread recipe. So keep that information. It's important, but it's not the current focus. It's not what needs to get done right now. It's something that can happen in that scenario in the evening or over the weekend. And finally, the last two categories, mobile idea capture, so accessing your brain from your mobile device. We'll be doing this today. And finally, prioritizing with thought types and tags, a key ingredient within the brain that I'll be highlighting on several occasions. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump out of our Zen for remote productivity and collaboration brain and right into a sample brain that Jay and I created for today's webinar. Now, again, this is a sample brain, so we can drop information really quickly, edit information. This is a brain that you can actually download from our website as well. I renamed the fictitious company name to MJ Corporation, but we'll also share links to this brain, so you can sample and play around with an example business brain in your brain environment. So I'm gonna I've got my Zen brain open on another screen. I want to walk through very quickly just the basics behind the brain application. In case you're just getting started with the brain, let me share with you really quickly. You can download our software from our website at www.thebrain.com. You'll have a free 30-day trial of the brain. After that 30 days, you can choose to purchase a license. You can continue on using the free version of the software. And you'll just be limited in the features that you'll have available, but you can continue on using the brain database that you've created. Now, a brain database is made up of thoughts. Thoughts are the building blocks of our brain. And you can see that each time I click on a thought, it moves that thought into the center of the plex and displays all related information around it. So here I click on marketing. These are all my different departments under MJ Corporation. And now I'm focusing on all the different categories of marketing: conferences, archived presentations, budgets, press releases, promotions, etc. So these are all individual thoughts. And you'll notice as I click from thought to thought, sometimes the content over on the right will update. This is the content area of the brain where we have notes, we have file attachments, web links, pretty much any type of digital information can be associated with a thought in some capacity. And here you can see I've got a web page with 10 simple marketing tips for small business. It's important to our marketing team. These are sort of the 10 steps that we follow. And so therefore I've got a nice little link to this web page where this was found on Inc. magazine there over on the right. So let's go ahead and talk about the relationship between thoughts. Now, I mentioned that every time I click on a thought, it brings that thought into the center, displays all related information around it. So up above, we have the parent thought. Down below, we have the child. So parent, active thought, and child thoughts down below. That's the basic structure of the brain. And it's sort of like a hierarchy. I'm clicking down through the marketing department until I get to the activity that I'm focused on, or the customer that I'm looking for. Now, over on the left, we have what we call a jump thought. Now, a jump thought is where you're really breaking away from any type of hierarchical structure. A jump thought is something that's related to the active thought, but not necessarily a subcategory. So here's a person, Angela Cart. She's our marketing manager. She reports to Daniel Rose. In the notes area, you've noticed I've got her phone number, contact information, and I can quickly see what department Angela works in and what her responsibilities are. And I'm clicking back just really quickly into the marketing department. So that's sort of a quick overview of thoughts and file attachments. Let's now talk about creating new thoughts. How was the brain constructed? So I'm going to jump down to promotions, and I've got a 2020 relaunch that we're looking at for our company. So we're refreshing ourselves and our corporate identity here in 2020. And this is where I'm going to manage this particular project. So I need to create some key thoughts that all of my information is going to connect to in this area of my brain. You'll notice that each thought has 3 small gates: a parent gate, a jump gate, and a child gate. So I'm just going to click and drag off of that child gate to create a new child thought. So I want an area for my budget, an area for milestones for this particular project, and share this little shortcut with you. If you're just getting started, brain, I always remind everyone you need to know about the semicolon. You can create multiple individual thoughts very quickly. So now I'll just say resources and semicolon, email, blitz. So I created a semicolon, so I instantly created those 2 thoughts. Now that I've created these thoughts, I can start connecting data and content. So let's jump right into adding actual files, documents, web pages, important information into your brain. So once again, now I have sort of my dashboard for where I am managing everything that's happening in the 2020 relaunch for my company. I'm going to jump down here to resources. I'll just minimize the brain a little bit. Now I've got some existing data that I want to bring into my brain. So I've got my resource tracking document that I've already created this outside the brain. Let's bring it in. I'm going to click and drag this file right into my brain. It creates a new thought. The thought name is the file name that you just did the drag and drop for. And added as an attachment is that Excel spreadsheet, a copy of that Excel spreadsheet. Now that's important to point out. The default for dragging and dropping into the brain is always going to create a copy of that particular file that you have. If you want to change that, you can click on options and go into your preferences. Now there's a lot that you can do here in the preferences to really make the brain, work and feel the way you want it to work in your environment. But this is really an important component. On the behavior tab, you need to specify when you're dragging and dropping, are you moving files into the brain, copying them, or just linking to them? Now, today's topic is all about collaboration. I'm going to be sharing this brain with Jay so that he and I can work together on this 2020 relaunch. Therefore, it's really important for me to have all these file attachments as internal file attachments in the brain. I actually want to move my files into the brain. And that's typically my preference anyhow. If you are still at the office, you're working on a network, other people have access to your Z drive, for example, and you just want to link to those files in case someone goes directly to the file on the Z drive and makes an update. You just want to be linking to that file. That is a scenario when you would choose linking to a file over moving or copying a file into the brain. The choice is yours. You can always go back and modify. If I find out at a later date, I only wanted this particular file linked to the brain, not moved in, I can right click and I can move or copy this file right out of the brain. Or on a shortcut, I can move or copy a file into the brain. So I'm now moving files into the brain so that I can collaborate with Jay. I'll just grab one more file. This is the corporate portal development Word document. I'm going to drag and drop. And notice that the file vanished from its original location. Now that I've changed that setting in the brain, this file has been moved internally into the brain. And this is really great because when I sync this brain and share it with Jay, he will have access to these particular files as well. Now, I mentioned earlier in the webinar, it's not just our own local files and PDFs and documents. It's files that we're receiving from disparate information sources such as Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. Now, the great thing about those applications, they're really, really great for just file storage in a very linear fashion. Obviously, it's a file and folder directory that is being saved somewhere online. So let's say I receive a link to a file from a Google Drive or from Dropbox, or if I'm even running my own Dropbox, which I am. I don't use Dropbox because I use the brain for sharing information, but if I were ever to receive, or if I'm in the process of transitioning from Dropbox into the brain, everything in Dropbox, and Dropbox is a great example because it sort of reflects the same. I think maybe Dropbox came along first, and then there's Google Drive and OneDrive and people that sort of emulate this structure. But you've got a local copy of everything, and then that's also being synced online. So this means I can still just drag and drop. If I want to move something out of my Dropbox directory into the brain, there I grabbed that green people document, moved it right into the brain. However, if I want to leave it in Dropbox, or I just received a link, everything that goes into Dropbox has a URL associated with it. So now I can right click on this file and select copy Dropbox link. It's that simple. Google Drive, OneDrive, I'm not going to go through and open every single file sharing application that exists today, but they're all pretty much the same. Look for copy link or copy shareable link. Sometimes it's under the share drop-down menu, but you'll find that shareable link. I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard for materials research. My computer told me I've just copied that onto my clipboard, so that's good. And now in the brain, I right click and I'm just going to paste web link. So now, unfortunately, Dropbox just names the file Dropbox. So I can click, there's materials research, it's in the thought label. I can flip flop those or just manually type in whatever I want that thought to be named. And I did that by opening up the thought properties dialog. You can alt click on any thought in the brain to open up the thought properties dialog. From here, I can see the date this file was created, modified. I can rename the document, add icons, etc. We'll be coming into to this area a little bit more later. But there, I've just simply renamed it Materials Research. And lo and behold, it actually, because it's a web link, it loads up right there in my content area over on the right. So I can preview that document. The document itself, if I were to launch this, it's going to open up my web browser and take me directly to that materials research document that's in my Dropbox directory. So we've got disparate information sources coming together that I'm managing all from the, whether it's a URL I received from a colleague, a file that I own, I'll still be able to share all of this with my colleagues. Now, let's also point out this link in particular, materials research. I share this with Jay. It really depends, since this came from my Dropbox account, it really just depends on I'm not sure what the right terminology is, the share level that I've applied to this particular file. Have I made it public, or is it password protected? Am I the only one that can get to this file? If that's the case, if I protect this particular file, I share my brain with Jay, you'll see that the file is there, but he won't be able to launch it because he doesn't know my Dropbox password. So I just need to right click and go into the share menu and decide, how do I want to share this particular file? Do I want to make it publicly accessible to give other people access? Just a personal choice. One last component for adding data into the brain, I want to talk specifically about web pages. So here I've got a thought called Email Blitz. We're going to be putting together a fancy email for all of our customers. And I happen to have some web pages that I really like that are all about what's trendy in marketing emails these days. So there's my web page. And here's my thought in the brain. I am simply going to click and drag from the address bar right into the brain. That creates thought, adds this web page as a thought. I type that really quickly. The brain actually looks at the coding and it's looking for a title tag to rename the thought. Once again, I can alt click, really good guide to design. That's all I need. I'll take the rest off. And that is going to then load up right there in my content window so I can move back to this web page, or Jay can refer back to this web page at a later date. So I've added files, I've added information from Dropbox and other online file storage utilities, I've added web pages. Jay's going to add some notes, but also I want to, before I share this brain with Jay, I want to bring his attention to a couple of key areas that I want him to focus on. And really right here at the top, Jay and I are really going to be nurturing this particular project. I want to make sure he's aware of that this 2020 launch thought has been created and that this is where I want him to focus his energy and his efforts. So without the brain, what would I do? I'd send an email, I'd pick up the phone, maybe we'd have a Zoom meeting and I'd say, all right, here's the area that I want you to work on, and I'd share my screen. You can do all of that within the brain without actually organizing that meeting or picking up that phone or sending that email. And I personally like to do that with thought tags. So we're going to talk now a little bit about thought types and tags. And one of the important tags that we create in a team environment, in a collaborative environment, are tags for people to bring their attention to particular thoughts. So if I click on this particular thought, once again, I open up the thought properties dialog. Here's the drop-down list of where I have thought types and thought tags. So first, let's look at thought types. You can only apply one thought type to a thought. And it looks like I've already done it. Sorry, I stole my own thunder there. I've already applied this as an action item. This is a key thing that I'm focused on, that my whole team needs to be aware of. So I'm making this an action item. And the reason why I do that, let me just make another thought type. Let's say we're just testing this particular process. So I add the testing thought type. Now, the great thing about that is that if I do a quick search for testing, there it is, testing, and I can go right to all thoughts that are tagged testing. Actually, I've got some subtags: testing errors, testing in progress, testing ready, and then there's my relaunch, which is currently being tested by my team. Thought types will appear linked in the Plex. I can right-click and select for that to not be visible, but I can still see that it's being tested, or it's under the testing category when I mouse over that thought. So all thoughts that are testing will appear when I go to that thought type. Another example is if I just want to find, for instance, all of my team managers. Now, my team managers are peppered throughout my brain. They're managers in many different departments. But here they all are. They're marked as managers. So if I just want to get directly to Jim Johnson, there he is. I can go right to Jim, see who reports to Jim, what department he's in, and what he is responsible for. So thought types are a great way to find classifications of groups of thoughts that are important to you. And this is a great example. It's an active project, the project that I'm working on. So I'm going to jump back to my relaunch, and I'm going to change my thought type to an action item. And I'm also going to pin my action item thought. So I'm going to go to the drop-down menu of all my thought types. I've got 3 action items right now. My clients that are up for renewal, we're revisiting every client, making sure that they're happy. We're putting together our new sales forecasts for 2020 and probably 2021, and our own corporate 2020 relaunch. That's an action item. So I'm going to right-click on this thought and select to create a pin. And this harkens back to that very first topic that I mentioned earlier today about having all of your important action items front and center. I literally did quite that. I created a thought type called action items. I made it a pin so that anytime, whenever I'm in this brain or I share this brain with another team member at my company, you can just click on action items, and these pins will be the same for each user. They can find all of the company action items that need to be focused on. And if they're involved in any way, they can hone in on that particular topic. That's what I'm going to do now with thought tags. So not only is the 2020 relaunch for my company an action item for everyone on the team, I really want to bring Jay on board. So once again, I'm going to open up my thoughts properties dialog and take a look at the available tags. So these are all the different tags that I have in this brain. Like I said, this is a sample brain. It's got a lot of different tags for things that are urgent, things that are not urgent, action items for people. That's what I'm going to be focused on now. And even different qualities. I've got a lot of different customers or people that speak French, speak Portuguese, speak Spanish, etc. So I tag those. Again, a tag is just an attribute that can be applied to a thought, and you can apply multiple tags to a thought. So I'm going to create, I don't see the tag that I'm looking there for in this list for J. So I'm going to create a new tag. I like to use the @ symbol for my people. And the reason why I do that, you can use any symbol you want. You can use the $ or the £, hashtag, whatever you'd like. I use the @ symbol because it's an easy way to find tags for people. It's an easy way to group them all together within my brain. And there I've applied this new tag @J. So now when I mouse over that thought, I can clearly see that that is Jay's focus now, that he's working on this particular thought. But not only that, in just a little bit here today, I'll be sharing this brain with Jay. Jay will be able to see that I am bringing this thought to his attention. He'll be able to do a quick search. Do I have anything waiting for me? Maybe type in Jay and go directly to all thoughts that are tagged @J. One more feature that I'll share with you, since we're talking about thought types and tags, if you'll notice, thought types and tags can be nested. They can be grouped together. And I really, really like to do that. Notice @J is way up here at the top because it's sort of in alphabetical order. I want them to fall under the people tag. So I'm going to navigate to my @J thought, and I'll make the parent thought people. There it is. Double click. And so now that @J, it's going to be nested under all of my people thoughts. So Jay will be able to find out what his responsibilities are. I can click on @Matt. And I didn't even know that I was supposed to be working on this Go West ad campaign for one of my clients. But someone else tagged me here, so it brings my attention. I need to focus on this. Got a meeting notes down below. It's for our company, Harley Manufacturing client. So I can look up Harley Manufacturing and learn more about them in the brain, etc. So those tags for people are really, really just a great way to identify who has ownership of thoughts in the brain, but also share key areas or bring those areas to attention of other people collaboratively on your team. Now, so the next thing I want to do, I'm building up towards sharing this brain with Jay. My next step is first off syncing this brain. There's a little cloud icon so that you can sync your brain up to app.thebrain.com. Let's talk about all the advantages of syncing your brain to app.thebrain.com. Number one, I've got TeamBrain. Jay and I can be editors on the same brain. That can be done with a TeamBrain license. So that's the first step in sharing my brain with Jay. But also the advantages are that now that this brain has been synced, I can access this brain online. I can log into the Brain website. So here I am at www.thebrain.com. I click on login, and it's got cookies, so it remembers my login information, takes me to my list of all available brains. I've synced a lot of different brain databases to the cloud. So these are all the different brains that I have available. But I can scroll down and I'm looking, there it is, MJ Corporation. So if I'm away from my computer, maybe I'm logging in to check a few emails or look something up from my wife's machine or from my kid's laptop. They don't have the brain installed, or if they do, I'm not logged in as the user, they are. So I can just go online to thebrain.com. There's MJ Corporation. I can get to my 2020 relaunch and maybe review this content to see if Jay's contributed in this area yet. Or I can also access my brain from other locations. I can download the Brain application and install it, log in from my traveling laptop or from my desktop at the office. I'm obviously in my home office today, but I can have the Brain installed on up to 4 different machines where I log in and access all of this data that I've made available for myself. In addition to that, I can access my Brain remotely from my iPhone as well. So I'm actually going to bring a little app that I have that I really like, and it is going to allow me to log in. Now, everything you're about to see on the screen is actually what we're seeing on my iPhone. So there you can see it's my home screen, but maybe if you still have the camera, that's the home screen, that's my dog. And so now I will, I'll go ahead and log in and go directly into the Brain app. So now this Brain that I have open, anytime you open the Brain app, we've got an iOS app and an Android app. It always takes you to your most recently activated Brain. This is actually a Brain that I created collaboratively with about 9 other employees at TheBrain Technologies. It's our COVID-19 Brain. And an entire recording of us demoing and using this Brain is available on our website. You'll see a big banner on our website. It's still there. So it's really, really been a helpful Brain for me to have and to communicate with other members of my team. But notice I can just click from thought to thought and navigate through this particular Brain. This Brain has a lot of information on sort of the science behind it, the cure that we're looking for, a little bit of information on the politics that are going on, as well as one area that I really like, silver linings. So notice I can search inspirations and silver lining. So these are, positive things that are happening these days. Now, how was this Brain created? This Brain was created thought by thought by adding a lot of web links and notes and information, but we used BrainBox. Now, I haven't had a lot of time to talk about BrainBox in today's webinar. This Brain was created by, if I just go out, and actually I read an article today, it's still up, Mount Everest visible from Kathmandu. So it hasn't happened in several decades. If I wanted to send this particular web page into my Brain, because I have the Brain app installed, I can just click on share, add to BrainBox. It's now been added. And when I return to the Brain and I click on BrainBox icon, there it is right at the top of the list. After several decades, Mount Everest is visible. And I will select and attach that as a child. There we go. So it's just been added as an attachment into my Brain. That's how this Brain was created. a large, rapidly growing brain created by about 9 different individuals, like I said, at TheBrain. And it's been very helpful for all of us at TheBrain. I won't go into the details, but you can actually download a copy of this brain and receive our most recent changes as we go. And these, of course, are all the different brains that I have available from the iOS app. So I'll go ahead and stop mirroring right now. So enough of my iPhone. So I've synced this brain to the cloud. I have added text. I've added thoughts, a whole area that I'm mapping out my action item for our company relaunch. I've added Word documents, spreadsheets, and web content. Now's the time to actually share this brain with Jay and sort of let him take the reins to start adding his own content as well. So to do that, with the brain synced, I'm going to click on online and go into brain access and sharing. Now, notice I've already shared this brain with Jay. So he's just to save you some time so he doesn't have to download it or upload it to the cloud and then download it. I've already synced it, shared it with Jay. He's got his copy. But notice these are the other members of my TeamBrain group. So I can share this with Shelly. I definitely want to make Shelly a writer. So I just right click, make Shelly a writer. I'd like Brigitte to have access and just be familiar with this brain. So I'll make Brigitte a reader in this brain. Just because I've got multiple, in that case, I think I've got 9 or 10 members of this group in my TeamBrain. Just because they're all members of my group and my TeamBrain doesn't mean that they automatically have access to every brain that I create. It's up to me, once I create the brain, if I decide to sync it to the cloud, and then who I want to share it with and what access level I want to provide to them. So Jay being an administrator means he can invite other people into this brain. Shelly has writer access, so she can edit. Brigitte can download a local copy of this brain and see all of the content, but can't make any changes. Anytime she clicks on the sync button, she'll just receive all of the changes that we've made and are available for her to download. Now, if you don't have TeamBrain, there's still ways to share a brain in read-only mode. I can make this brain publicly accessible and send out a URL. So anyone that has that URL would be able to launch and open this brain online through the web client. Email addresses that are added here, if I just add an email that's not in the list, I'll invite. I will not have the option to make them a writer because they're not a member of my TeamBrain group, but they'll still be able to download a read-only copy. So in order to type that email address in right there, that user has to have the Brain application installed, but still they'll only have read-only. And when I click on save, just a standard little warning message, you're about to share this brain with other users. I click on OK. And the brain will actually send out an email invitation welcoming Shelly and Brigitte and the MS Caton at 333, welcoming them to the brain. There's an email has been sent out. And they will then have access to go in. And if they've got editor access, which Jay does, he'll be able to edit this brain. So with that, Jay, I'm going to send presenter over to you and let you access this area and add some new information.
All right, I think you should be able to see my main screen now here.
I can, yes.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so we're going to start off on the Brains list page here. Just a quick show of how customizable the brain can be. I have quite a few different wallpapers and things, and I like to keep mine kind of vibrant with different colors and also use the dark mode. That's something of a little bit of a preference for me. But let's get into the MJ Corporation brain here. Matt mentioned a few things here about pinned thoughts and a way for me to quickly get to a topic or something like that that I need to see without him having to send me an email. And so right here, just opening up this brain, I can see that he's already pinned the action item thought here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And for the sake of this example, we could just say Matt and I just had a meeting about our partnership, and it went great. And so now I'm just taking some meeting notes here and some of the tasks that we had mentioned during the meeting to do after the meeting. So this is to help me kind of keep track of what I need to do right after the meeting, and also, hopefully check those things off and not have to look around this brain to see, oh, what's next on the list, what else do we need to do to move on. I can just look at this one note here. Before I get into that, though, for those who are not yet quite familiar with the notes in version 11, we do have the new Markdown editor in version 11, which allows you to do some inline formatting while you're typing, which is pretty cool for people who do use that kind of stuff. For others who are really familiar with the buttons and the icons here to format your notes, you can also still do that. So for example, here, you can just type in something like this to bold a word. You could type in something like this to make a word italic. So that's pretty cool. It's sort of a preference whether or not you want to use that inline formatting as you type. And then also, if you're not really sure what to type to get some of these things, there is also a really cool hint icon here that brings you to our website and kind of tells you, what you would, it gives you a little legend almost of all the markdown tags that TheBrain does support and how you can use those in the notes. So that's definitely, I think, is really cool, and I would definitely recommend that people check that out. And like I said, you can always still use the buttons in the notes, so that's no problem at all. If you just want to kind of go, highlight a word and then click on bold, that still does the same thing. And as you can see here, once I click outside of the notes, all the tags are removed, and what you have is just a formatted word. So pretty cool stuff there. But let's jump right into the meeting notes here. So we are just gonna take some notes from our meeting, and I'm just gonna create a quick task list here. That will make it easier for me to kind of check things off as I go. So let me just create this here. So I use the dash as a quick way to create a checkbox, but there are also different ways to do that. You can use the brackets, the square brackets, to do that as well. To do a checked box, you can use the X, but again, going into the details of the markdown here, you can definitely go into the little hints dialog there to get the details of that. So here we can say, so 1 second to get. All right. So meeting with Matt to finalize contract. We can say send remaining legal documents. So I'm just making things up here to kind of create a list. Schedule follow-up. Let's see, sign closing documents. And let's see, attend celebration party, because our meeting was successful and our contract signed, and everything went great. So for certain things in your list here, I mean, just again, so as you go down this list, you kind of check things off as you get them done. But for certain things in your list here, it might be good to have a timestamp or something like that when you do complete it. So let's say we signed the documents today, and we want to timestamp that, so we know that for the future. So in the notes toolbar here, you can actually just click on the icon, the calendar icon, to timestamp in the notes. So just by clicking on that, it adds today's date and the time. And this is actually customizable in the preferences setting. Can bring it there real quick, but I won't get too deep into that. So you can customize that as you see fit. Let's see here. So in the notes editor tab, you can click on the the custom date time format for notes here, and that will allow you to format that timestamp however you see fit. So you can add the year first, or the day first, or the month first, whichever way kind of works best for you here. So let's say after, one of the things on the list that we need to do is attend this celebration party, which will be taking place, we can say on the 21st, tomorrow. So we can say August 21st here. And that really won't be quite enough, because if I was in this brain and I was an MJ corporation and I knew there was something I needed to do in this brain, it's not clear what I need to do right off the bat. So there are really cool things that you can do in the brain. You could create an event on a thought. You can add a reminder to the event such that if you open this brain, it's the first thing that pops up in front of you saying, hey, you need to attend this party. So there are quite a few things few ways that you can kind of remind yourself of some of these things. And here we can just quickly add an event. So there are a few different ways to add an event to a thought, but I believe, per my opinion, this is the quickest way to do it. So you click on the add attachment, more actions, and then you have a create event option here. And we're just gonna go ahead and create an event and say, attend celebration party. All right. And as you can see, with most standard events, you can make it all day. You can set a time frame that you want the event to be. You can also set a reminder here to remind you at a time span before the event itself. And then you can also let the event repeat if you need to. But for this one, we'll just say that we only need it here. And the really cool thing about this too is you can create events that are not attached to thoughts specifically. Because I created this event on the thought, it is actually automatically attached to the thought. But so if we go into the timeline here, but you can see that, you could create a different event that's not attached to any thoughts, and you can kind of keep a pretty good calendar here in the brain to remind you of certain events. But attaching an event to a thought is great, because once you activate that thought, you'll see the event as one of the attachments, and that'll help you kind of, just know that that event is there. That's something that you need to do. So with that,
and Jay, while you're there,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, just because it answers, Magnus had a question about different events for the same topic. You can actually add multiple events to
Right.
The same thought. So event number 1, event number 2 is going to be something completely different, but it's still connected to the same thought. So there you can see Jay is just adding multiple events at different dates, different times to the same thought.
So you can actually, pretty cool, you can add multiple events to the same attachment. You can also create a new attachment and add another, set of events to that. So that works as well. But yeah, so feel free to
Great.
add as many events to a thought as you need to.
Excellent.
So yeah, and with that, actually, so real quick, I will mention as well that you can change these lists. You can change them to ordered lists, unordered lists, depending on what you want. And you saw me use the markdown little markdown trick to get the checkboxes here, but you can also just use these icons in the notes toolbar, so you can change it into an unordered list or an ordered list, and then you can also change it back to a checkbox, just kind of using these same icons here. But with that, I would say Matt should be able to now receive these changes on his end. So I'm going to go ahead and sync here, and then you should be able to see. And just to quickly touch on the history as well, like Matt mentioned, all the things that he's changed during this webinar, I can definitely see here and quickly just kind of see what are the recent changes, what do I need to kind of pay attention on this brain that's most recent, and then you can see my changes as well. So that's a pretty cool thing there. And there we go, we have our event popping up, reminding us of our party here. So don't be late to that, Matt.
Yeah, we better wrap this up quickly. So we're not late for our launch party.
Right.
Great. So I'm going to share my my screen one more time here, and that's great, Jay. Thank you, and I'm glad you shared with everyone the fact that you and I both can review. Here's the recent changes that Jay did. I know when he made that change, what thought it was on, and did he update the note? Did he add an attachment, event? Each individual thought within the brain that you create has its own history. So not only can I see all of the recent changes, and the recent changes is filterable as well. So I can find all changes made specifically by Jay or specifically by Brigitte or Shelley or myself in a particular time frame. So highly customizable, but also on each individual thought. I just want to click on this relaunch and take a look at the history. I can see who's made changes to this thought and when that change took place. So there's a lot of accountability in the TeamBrain environment that is happening as well. And of course, there I can see, because of I noticed in the recent changes, meeting notes was added and changed the note by Jay, so I can get directly down to his meeting notes. If I wasn't at the meeting or I need to review what's been completed, what hasn't, I've got access to all of that information here on my end. And there is the reminder. So we both get those great reminders. I'll go ahead and snooze that for 10 minutes. And that will take us over then into Q&A. And Jay, I've seen a lot of questions coming in the QA. A couple of them I want to address right away because multiple people, Dennis, Chris, I think, asked about templates in the brain. If there's a process that you repeat over and over and over again, how can that be brought into the brain so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on a new company that you're researching or a project that you're working on, and you always have key thoughts over and over again. Here's the budget, here's the email, here's the meeting, etc. So you can certainly do that in a number of ways, and the brain has different import capabilities. So idea number one is to create another brain. So I would just say File, New, oops, I just said New tab. So File, and I'm actually going to create a new brain, and this brain is going to be called, we'll say, Company Import or Project Import. So I create my new brain, and the brain will always select one of the different wallpapers. So you're about to see some random wallpaper that I've created in the past, sort of a little techie wallpaper. Doesn't matter what the wallpaper is. I can come back and change the theme later. But under projects, the new projects, we're going to have our parts. We're going to have our players, process, meetings, and let me spell that correctly. Meetings and release, notes, and we'll do a timeline. So I can save this as its own brain that can be imported. So I can click on File, back up to Brain Archive. Now this process takes a little while, so I'm not going to do this now. I just want to point out to what you can do. You can back it up to a Brain Archive, a single file that can be then imported into other brains over and over again. So again, every time you got a new project, you've got these 6 key categories. In this case, since it's just and you can have multiple file attachments. So let's just, for one example, here's my table for a new meeting, our time, place, and the discussion. And then there's a file attachment. Really quickly, I'm going through this all very quickly. There's just a blank Word document I'll attach to this thought. Great, so we've got file attachments, maybe even subcategories down below, 1 and 2. This is a really great way to get a lot of existing data into the brain. So now I'm going to Control-click on Project Import. It's chilled, so I Control-click on the gate. And even meeting notes, I'll Control-click there. It's more detailed. This is a much more advanced feature of the brain, but you can click on Edit and add recently, or excuse me, where is it? Select related thoughts. So you can say, all right, this thought and all child thoughts for 100 generations down. What's important to you? I'm going to copy that information onto my clipboard. So I copy those 9 thoughts. I go back into MJ, and under milestones, that's where I'm going to have my project outline, paste those 9 thoughts. Now, when I paste 9 thoughts again elsewhere in the brain, say, hey, I already have them in my brain. What do you want to do? So I'll have the option to overwrite these 9, which I wouldn't want to do. I'll end up creating a copy in a different area of my brain. But there you can see the child thoughts down below, the notes, the file attachment, etc. So it's very easy to get imports of templates. Another way to do that is with a Word document, a tab delineated list in a Word document. Some people do their imports that way of sort of chunks of thoughts that they recreate over and over in different areas of the brain. I like to have another brain that gets imported in, whether you just copy the thoughts or import the BRZ. So that is a more advanced feature, but it's certainly a capability. And with that, Jay, what other types of questions did we have come up today?
Yeah, there was a question. Someone was curious about how I got the icon for the markdown hint. So there are 2 types of toolbars in the notes editor. There's the compact toolbar and the full toolbar. So if some of you guys can't see some of the icons that I displayed on my notes there, it's because you might be using the compact toolbar. So be sure to click on the 3. There should be 3 lines. The very last icon should be 3 lines, and that will be the action or context menu, I should say, that will contain more options for the toolbar icons. So if it's not already in there, it should be by clicking those 3 lines that Matt just showed there.
Yeah, and that's just a setting that I just clicked on if you were looking at my screen. There's many different ways to manipulate sort of the look and feel of the brain. One of them is whether you want every single button for every option in the toolbar or the compact toolbar. So that's where you'd find it. Whether, regardless of which feature you choose, all the options are there. It's just a matter of whether they're in a drop-down menu or there's an individual button, but all the features exist in both environments.
I also got another question. Someone wanted to know, Lisa wanted to know how many machines, or if mobile phones and tablets count towards the 4 machine limit for each license, which I did answer her, but I think it would just be good for you to kind of mention that.
Sure. If you purchase a license for TheBrain, you can use that license to register the application on 4 machines, desktops and laptops. Your iPhone, your iPad, an Android device does not count towards those 4 devices. So personally, I've got TheBrain installed here on my workstation for my home office. I've got it installed on the computer that I use at the Brain office when the office is open. I've got it on a traveling laptop. So those are 3 machines where I use my license. My iPad and my iPhone, I'm an iOS user. I use the Brain there as well, but it doesn't count towards those 4.
Another real quick question. I think this is a good one. I'm not sure if you can cover it without going, too deep into some advanced stuff. But someone wanted to know, let's see here. Dennis wanted to know, can you quickly change notes associated with a thought to a different thought? Clearly you can just copy paste, but I was going to mention you can change the notes file as well over to the other thought in the thought folder, but I don't know if you know of a different quick.
Yeah, I think copy and paste is going to be the best option for you. Yes, every individual thought has a containing folder, and you can right click on a thought, do a thought with a note. I can right click on a thought and select to open the thought folder, and you'll see a notes.md file there. So I could copy that MD file, navigate to another thought, right click, open thought folder, paste it in. I think that's a bit of a workaround. It's much easier just to say, hey, I wanted this stuff. I'm going to copy this, jump over to milestones, and Control V, just paste it right in. That's an easy way to do it. Also, we failed to mention today that you can have multiple attachments on a single thought. So maybe these are all my ideas I have about milestones, or these are Jay's actually, since he typed that note. I want to add my own content, so I'm going to click on the plus tab, and I'm going to add a note. So we'll call this Matt's note. So 2 notes on the same thought. So there's Jay's original default notes, and then there's my notes here on as an attachment. So that's another great feature of the Brain 11, multiple notes on a single thought. And it's really, really key to today's topic of collaboration, because you can have just sort of just the default discussion board on a thought, the notes. But if you don't want to overwrite that, or you don't want to contribute there, just keep your own ideas about that particular topic, create another note on that particular thought and add your information there as well.
All right, great. So maybe we can make this a final question here, or actually, I do still see more questions coming in. So I guess it's up to you how long you want to go for. Sure. So there's a question here from Martha, who wants to know if there are limits to collaborating, or how many people can collaborate as a team on the same brain. I think part of the question was also just kind of understanding how, you know how Brigitte and I were part of your organization, how the users go about doing that, and if you could touch on that a little bit.
If you're interested in TeamBrain, please send a note into support@thebrain.com or sales@thebrain.com. We can provide some more information. We can also start you off on a 30-day free trial of TeamBrain. So we can answer any detailed TeamBrain questions you have there. But really quickly, as far as limitations, there is no limit to the number of users that can share a brain. We've got TeamBrain groups that exist with over 100 users. Now, are all of them editors? Typically not. Usually in environments like that, there's about 5 to 10 sort of project specialists. So they're the editors that are adding the information into the brain. And then there's 100, 200 people that have access to that brain, sometimes in call centers, and they can download and work remotely and be full functioning. And it's really working out right now with the COVID pandemic that's going on. All these employees are working from home with their laptop, where they have the brain installed and access to all of that information to continue on taking calls and doing their job. So regardless, there's no number to, and here I was going to show you really quickly, this particular brain, we'll just say the past 180 days. It'll take a little bit to update that, but you'll see there was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 editors in this brain. So no limits, and the brain keeps track of all of that information. There you can see Brigitte, Harlan, Jarrett. We've all been contributing to this brain over the past few months. And again, all of those actions are trackable, so you can roll back and find who has made those changes and when. And of course, we set that up for you. When you purchase TeamBrain, we set up your group. You provide us with a list of your users. One member of your team will assign all the licenses to the users that have created their account, and it's magic. They'll all appear in that that little drop down menu. Also, all of that being said, there's another product that we haven't talked today, TeamBrain Server, that we haven't talked about today. TeamBrain Server, and TeamBrain Server will actually allow you to sync a brain that you've created to your own personal server. So you're not syncing up to app.thebrain.com, you're syncing to www.myprivateserver.com. So if you'd like to know more about TeamBrain Server, please send a note into support.thebrain.com, and we'll be happy to answer all those questions for you. And also, I did see a question come in from Marco regarding BrainBox. I'm happy to share the features of BrainBox with you as well. BrainBox is a really, really great way to send information into your brain that can be categorized and navigated at a later date. Now, you saw earlier on my iPhone, I was just in Safari on a web page I like, share, I click on the share icon, send it into BrainBox. It works a little bit differently on Mac and Windows machines. So for example, if I find a web page that I like, there's my web browser. So here's another, we were talking earlier about good email designs for the project that I'm working on. Here's another great web page that I found that I really like. But let's say I don't have the brain open right now, or specifically not that brain that I want to attach this particular web page to. I have installed the BrainBox. I forget, sometimes they're either called bookmarklets or extensions. For Google or for Chrome, it's called an extension. So Chrome has their own list of extensions, or you can go to our website and we've got instructions for how to install the BrainBox Chrome extension. But here you can see I have it installed. When I find a web page I like, I simply click on that button and it gets added into my BrainBox. If I have a file, and for files, you don't need to do anything different. Let's see, not out of that Dropbox directory. I'll just open a new directory here. So let's say I find a file that I really like, desktop 2, marketing. And once again, here's my corporate framework. I want to send that into BrainBox as well. For this, I'm going to right click and select share, or send to rather, BrainBox. So that's on a Windows machine. If Jay was demoing today on a Mac, he'd show you that you actually drag the file down onto the dock on your Mac where the brain icon appears, and that's adding it to the BrainBox. So also remember, I set my brain to move files, so you may have just noticed that file disappeared. That means it made it, it's in BrainBox, and now when I return to the brain, oops, see, return to the brain, I can get to the right brain. So here's MJ Corporation, and I want to go specifically over to my resources, and this is where I want to add that Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on the BrainBox icon. Right there at the top is my Excel spreadsheet, and I can either click on the plus, add it as a child, add it to the current thought, open it to preview it, and here's where the context menu, I can delete it, etc. So I'm just going to add that as a child thought, corporate framework. The other item has 50 best emails, so I'm going to jump over to my email blitz and BrainBox, 50 best examples, and add that there. So you can sort of think of your BrainBox as a way of just sending data into the brain without actually having to open the brain, navigate to the correct brain, the correct thoughts, and drag and drop and get the two on the screen at the same time. It's a really, really great way to just quickly send something into the brain and categorize it later. This is my real BrainBox, so you all are seeing a little insight into my life. How to cook rice, herb roasted pheasant, some sourdough recipes, turkey lasagna, etc. So you can tell there's food on my mind these days. But regardless, I see something I like, I send it into a BrainBox and just categorize that thought later. So I think with that, we've certainly gone over the hour. And Jay, are there other pressing issues, or shall we sign off?
I think you covered the last one. That BrainBox one was the last one I was going to bring up. So yeah, all good.
Great. So thank you everyone for joining us today for the webinar. It's really been great to, number one, if you're just seeing the brain for the first time, to introduce you to the application, but specifically focus on the zen and joy of remote productivity and collaboration. Hopefully Jay and I have given you a few ideas on how you can start collaborating in the brain. If you do have more questions about the software or about today's topic, please send a note to support@thebrain.com. We've got a fantastic support team that Jay and I are both members of. We're happy to get back to you with any answers you may need. And also you can find more information on our website. There's helpful tutorials a user guide, and everyone that joined today's call will receive an email with a link to a recording so you can watch again at your leisure. So thanks again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.